Meeting will be called to order at 7:01 PM. Commissioner Haza, would you take roll?
Yes. Greg Michelle. Jason Whitman.
Present.
Ron Haza. Here. Joe Edmond. Richard Hawk. Here. Mike McLaughlin. Mario Reyes.
Here.
Jeff Wade.
Here. Commissioner, can we recognize any staff or city council with us tonight?
Alex. All right.
Okay. Are there any citizens to be heard? As there was a sign-up sheet? Nope. Okay. Open session is closed at 7:02 PM. Okay, item 4, items for individual consideration, discussion and action on the minutes of the regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission dated March 6, 2018. Is there a motion?
Mr. Commissioner, Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve the minutes. Board
Is there a
minutes.
second?
I'll second it.
Give room. Yea or nay?
All in?
All in?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Item 5, discussion and action on a request by Philip Manea for approval of a wayfinding sign to be located in the municipal right-of-way pursuant to Municipal Code of Ordinances, Chapter 98 zoning. Is anyone here? No. Okay. Mr. Schroeder, you have anything to say about this one?
Chairman, staff submitted the agenda item request form to the commission. Essentially, what we were looking at was does the proposed sign specifically comply with code? In looking at it, we do believe that it does comply with code. The only thing that is required at this point would be that it have to go to city council for an encroachment license application, because it would be within the city right-of-way. And so if the commission approves or denies, whatever y'all do tonight, the encroachment would still have to be approved by city council. So if y'all approved the sign, but city council said no to the encroachment, essentially the item dies. But for tonight's meeting, y'all are looking at the sign criteria for a off-premise freestanding sign, essentially.
Okay.
And we do believe it complies with code. It's certainly a lot better than the prior one that was submitted to y'all.
Yes. Does anybody have any opinion on this?
Mr. Chair, I have a question for Rick. Do we know if this is approved, if the existing current sign will continue to stay, or will it be removed? Because isn't it in close proximity, this one that's being proposed?
Yeah, there are several signs in this location, and so that, we're gonna address that when it goes to council as to what, if this gets approved and council wants to grant this an encroachment, what other signs need to be removed or relocated so that they're not all congregating in just that one area where the sidewalk, or excuse me, where the driveway is. But I have not prepared for that for tonight's meeting. Tonight's meeting, in my opinion, was really to look at whether the design was sufficient in order to be granted approval, and then when I send it to council, we'll address those encroachment issues at that time.
Very good, thank you, sir.
And I think my understanding from the last meeting was that there was kind of a sign they just sort of threw up in this location, but they're actually going to be taking that down in favor of this sign.
Yes, but there is actual signage in the right-of-way right there that directs people to other businesses throughout the district.
Right.
And so that's actually, it was originally erected by a private property owner, but kind of gifted, I guess you would say, to the city, and so the city maintains them. So we may need to move that one in order to accommodate this one. Otherwise, you're just gonna have them feet, literally feet apart, so.
Okay.
Is that what that kind of rectangular concrete pillar is right next to the blue?
That rectangular, well, it looks like a concrete pillar. That's actually like a miniature house that the prior property owner built to cover the Saw's fire line that's going into the structure or into that development. That fire line's quite large, and it serves as both a fire line plus also domestic supply. And so it comes out of the ground, has a
Valve.
thank you, a valve. Has a valve, and then it goes back into the ground. So that, there's like a little small building, decorative building that tries to cover that valve.
Would there be any way that this sign could be put on either side of that thing? If they don't allow the encroachment? I mean, because it looks like the right-of-way is cuts off right next to that, isn't it?
Google Street?
Yeah, let me pull up the.
Or is there anything on that?
There's, to my knowledge, nothing on that building.
Obviously, if you're gonna put it on the building, you'd have to put it on both sides of that building just to
Because of the direction, yeah, they're coming in
try and
both
get
directions.
directions from both ways there. And I don't know, there may be some landscaping that needs to be preserved that's kind of causing a headache there too.
You can see this is where that, oh, I don't have it up there for y'all to see it. It's a little difficult to see with that light on, but you can see that this is that little house that covers the water main going into the property. Of course, there's some illegal signs here. And then there is the directional sign here that directs people to other locations throughout the district and also into that property. So this is the main, this is gonna be the one that's in conflict with the proposed sign that would need to be relocated. I'm not quite sure that if you put, Commissioner, the sign on the building itself,
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and
That-
there's an access, obviously an access issues with
Yeah.
that fire line that would probably prevent that, kind of having a closer look at that, so. Next, presumably, we could make a motion that would include, I mean, it's a recommendation motion, right? So we could, further recommend something to the effect that they would be required to take down signs that would be required of them in lieu of this sign.
this is not a recommendation item. This is actually an approval
Actual
item.
approval, okay.
Now, again, if council elects not to allow the encroachment, then the issue dies.
Right, okay.
But then there's gonna be yet another sign out there with the other three?
Yeah, there's only one, can you
Legal?
go turn that light off actually over there? There's only one sign that actually is a legitimate sign that would be in conflict. And once she
Right.
turns that light off, you can see that it's we have these scattered throughout the district. These signs right here, I hope, are gone if our code enforcement's doing its job.
I don't think they're there. I was there last weekend. I think they're gone.
This
Yeah.
sign is the one that's actually in the ground, and those are the same signs that we have scattered throughout the district,
Yeah.
that have arrows on them
Yeah.
going to different locations. So that's the only true sign that needs to be reconciled in order to put this parking sign there.
Okay. Okay.
Is there enough room to put it where those two signs that aren't there?
Yes, I mean, we're talking about 4 feet by 4 feet essentially, so yes, there would be enough room there. I just don't know if council's going to allow two signs that close together in that location.
Okay, well, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the request by Philip Manea for approval of wayfinding sign to be located in municipal right-of-way pursuant to Municipal Code of Ordinances, Chapter 98 zoning, Section 9872, Old Town Helotes Special District, contingent that the applicant submits an encroachment license application and have the same reviewed by city council.
Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Any further comments?
Nope.
Yea or nay?
Yay.
Yay.
Yay. It's unanimous. That was item 5. Okay. All right. Move on to item number 6, discussion of an action on a request by B.R. Anderson Jr. for approval of a pole freestanding sign, including requisite variances to the Municipal Code of Ordinances, Chapter 98 zoning, Section 9872, Old Town Helotes Special District. Is applicant here? And Rick, you have anything to say about this before we?
No, sir, staff didn't provide a recommendation. We did look at it and try to review it in light of the code, and essentially the major issue with this sign, if you look at it in light of the Old Town Sign Code, is the size of the sign that's being presented here, and the A-shaped frame, or the A-shaped style of that sign.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think we had discussed that at a previous agenda item, where we were making some amendments to the code, the A-frame sign. Where did that wind up in terms of?
The sign code's still being reviewed by city council, those amendments.
Okay.
It's still in there as a prohibited sign, despite those reviews, so.
Okay. And the size, I know we had discussed allowing a larger size, given the frontage to Bandera Road, more in line with the B3, Central Business District size. And I think it was, the comment was that we could go bigger, more in line with that size of the business district size signs, but that keeping the Old Town Helotes, the other codes regarding the materials and so forth.
Yeah, staff put on page 1, I mean, we basically went verbatim from the minutes or from the discussion at that time. The commission's consensus was that it did not believe the proposed pole sign was appropriate in the district, and we're referring to the original pole sign that was proposed. But
Right.
it would consider a monument sign with a total allowable height of 12 to 15 feet, which was similar to other monument signs along Bandera Road outside of the Old Town District.
Okay. All right, so Mr. Anderson, thank you for coming back.
No problem.
And I see you've shown us kind of two different variations on this.
Well, and the holdup is, quite honestly, my sign guy. He's been a little remiss in getting me dimensions and
Okay.
actual schematics, but and I didn't have artwork for you when I submitted everything, but this is not the scale, but this is the proposed signage that we would put on our sign at the top for the restaurant. The other strip signs across, Rick, you need a copy?
Thank you.
The other strips below my sign would be for the doctor's office, the insurance company, the arts and crafts lady and so forth as well, and that'll just be, generic font. But like I say, this is not to scale, but this is the artwork that we want to use to put on the sign.
Okay.
And I didn't catch the part about not having A-frame style at the last meeting, so I hope that's not an issue. After looking at it, it's just, if we put just a single vertical sign, it's gonna be really difficult to catch the traffic because of the way we're positioned.
How high is this sign?
15 foot to the top, which is, I believe, within code, if it's a multi-tenant sign.
Chairman?
Yes.
Would you consider rocking up the base to make it not a pole?
Actually, we had looked at that, but where the sign is being positioned, if you'll look on the schematic there, it's behind our dumpsters. It's actually between the dumpster and the fence. So we kind of felt like, well, investing all the money in the rock and the landscaping to be within code is kind of silly, since that's going to be behind the dumpster and behind a fence.
But if the fence ever comes down,
If the fence were to come down, then yes, we would have to. But that fence isn't going anywhere because that hides our dumpsters, and I don't think we want the dumpsters just out visible on Highway 16. I think y'all might have problems with that.
Yeah.
Code enforcement might come find me.
Have you ever thought about the idea of moving that fence back to where it looks like in between, where you have the sign on this map here located? It's right off of the concrete. There's like a 4 or 5 foot gap.
Yes.
Between the concrete and the fence. Have you thought about moving that part of the fence? Because it looks like this other fence goes right here, back to that concrete, so it does hide right up against your dumpster, and then having the sign more out in the open?
That's something I guess we could look at. It's, more money. For a small business, it's more money.
It's always the case.
Moving a fence, we're talking about moving it back 5 feet. And your thought would be to pull the fence back and put the sign in front of it so that then.
In front of it to give it
So
more,
that-
more exposure,
Well, the,
because then you see the whole sign as opposed to just the top.
well, the pole.
5 foot.
The structure of the sign, the actual sign will not start until above the fence. And so, quite honestly, our thought process was, well, what if it's behind the fence and between the dumpsters? Hopefully then we won't have to rock it and do all that, the actual sign would start at about 6 feet just above the fence and then go up. Anything's possible.
I have a question, sir.
Yes.
On that topic, has there been discussion, or it's not, I'm just curious, when they come to pick up the dumpster, is there free way to get in and out?
Oh, yeah.
Even if you were to move the fence in or put the sign there next to the dumpster?
Well, we'd have to push our dumpsters back a little bit, actually, now that I think about it, yeah. So I'd probably lose 1 parking space to do that. I didn't think about that. And that's if the landlord would approve it as well.
Yeah, so I guess you're a tenant, so you're working with the landlord to do this, and I presume, is he paying for, not necessarily germane, but
I'm
you're
paying
you're
for the
paying
sign.
for it? Okay.
I am
so-
paying for the sign. The only thing I'm asking the other tenants to pay for, I'm gonna pay for the entire structure because I need the sign.
Yeah.
They'd like to have a sign, but they don't need one as badly as I do. I'm paying for the structure, I'm paying for the electrical, I'm paying for everything. The only thing they're gonna pay for is their little strip.
Yeah.
We plan on staying there long-term.
Yeah.
And, we feel like, it's funny, I was having breakfast, as I told y'all last time, I live in Bandera, and I was sitting in the cafe eating breakfast this morning, and the waitress said, "Hey, have you met BR? Have you been to his barbecue place?" And he's like, "Where's it at?" And said, "Right next to Flores." He says, "Where? I drive by there all the time." And, so we honestly feel like if we can get a sign out there to let people know we're there, that our business can grow.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of ironic that I met someone else again this morning.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
is this internally lit or externally lit?
External, top, downlet. Again, it was a cost thing. If we did a vertical, just one sign, a box, we would do backlit. But the problem, again, is the visibility, and so we elected to
Yeah.
propose the A-frame with the lights on top facing down.
Yeah, I think Old Town doesn't really allow internally lit signs, as I recall. I think that's what we're trying to kind of maintain with the size, but maintain everything else. This is the Old Town.
Most of the lights that come from Old Town are top-down, sort of
Yeah.
barn
Yeah.
style lights.
Right, right.
My intention is with the sign is to mimic the same style as the Welcome to Helotes sign that y'all have.
Yeah.
It's, you know, a black painted metal posts with a sign across it.
With a rock base and landscaping, right?
If necessary. If you want it, we'll do it.
Yeah.
I'm hoping because it's behind the dumpster and the fence that. But no, we're prepared. If y'all say, no, you've got to rock it, then we're gonna do it. At this point in time, we're basically willing to do whatever we need to do to get a sign.
Mr. Chairman, so you are willing to rock it, and if you rock it, you might as well move the fence, if necessary.
If necessary.
I just wanted to,
Yeah.
Well, just,
Okay.
let me throw this out here. You know, you've got this little return on this fence, and I think, maybe you're sensing the board, you know, this fence is not, you know, this looks like about the end of the line for this thing. And I
end of
think
the
that's
line
at
for-
the fence. I mean, it's,
No,
that strong gust is gonna take this thing out.
Oh, no, not at all. It's
No.
actually a steel frame.
Really?
And the cedar posts are wired onto it. Yeah, actually, whoever installed the whole thing did a really good job. Because that same cedar post style fence is on the other side of our parking lot between us and the vacant field. And no, surprisingly, that fence is stout. Yeah, so you know what, actually, now that I think about it, moving that would be an undertaking. And again, that's if the landlord will agree to do it, or allow me to do it.
All right.
and the existing monument sign, are you gonna bring that down, or?
Well, we'll take our sign off of it for sure. I mean, I know that has to happen.
Okay.
You know, because we're not allowed double signage.
Yes, okay.
So, yeah, we'll take our sign off of that. And again, if y'all want the rock monument taken down, then I'll have to ask the landlord about that as well.
Ask Rick if that'd be required.
Yeah, I guess, would that be
Rick, would that be
Required or-
required to remove the rock monument? If they took the sign off?
conceivably, they could put a directional,
I don't think it would be, I think the clear answer is they would need to remove unless council was to approve them to have both, they would need to remove the signage off the monument sign at the very least. I mean, then it's low enough, it could operate as sort of like a planter or something.
It actually has a planter.
Yeah.
I think the most they could possibly do would be to add like a directional sign.
Yeah, I was gonna say, put like entrance with an arrow.
They could, but that would require approval.
Yeah. But we wouldn't, the point being that nobody would give them permission to do a second monument sign on that, like other tenants coming in and putting their own large sign on that monument sign, essentially.
No, it wouldn't.
Yeah,
No, any signage that would be placed on that existing monument sign would still have to come before the commission, at the least, and may have to go before council, depending on what it is.
Yeah, I guess in addition to the other comments, I mean, I'm not quite sure what this thing looks like exactly. There seems to be some, I guess some other design changes that are forthcoming in this new graphic that you're showing us. And I don't know, is this supposed to be like white vinyl below this, or what is that other material that your other tenants would be, the field of that sign?
Just basic font, Agora Benefits is the name of one of the companies.
Yeah.
What's the doctor's name there? I can't remember his name. Dr. whatever.
Yeah.
And so forth, but yeah, nothing crazy.
Yeah, I think we kind of, just the codes that are of Helotes in general, but more particularly of the Old Town, kind of try to shoo you away from white fields on signs as much as possible. I mean,
Alright.
I think another color.
Well, I'm assuming that each one of them will have to submit a request to have their name and so forth on that sign as well.
There's a lot of questions coming in.
It's never easy.
If this was if this was wall signage, then the answer could potentially be no, because they would be required to submit a master sign plan, and then you would define the parameters for individual tenants to put it on the wall itself. I think that whoever goes on the tenant side, and I would need to, the short answer, I need to research that, but, at the very least, they would have to come in and pull an administrative permit in order to place something up there, yes.
Okay.
My point being, though, that, we don't know if ever it would be, and so, speaking for myself, I think I'd feel more comfortable it being, more of a color that is, of what the code states and of the town, so that if it does stay blank forever, at least it's a blank panel that, is not a bright white thing as opposed to, what we're looking for in more traditional colors.
I understand.
Yeah, I wouldn't, when we erect it, if they don't have approval for their brand or whatever on there, those panels won't be there until they create them and put them there.
Okay, so it's.
So there won't be blank white panels or whatever there.
Okay.
Initially, I'm most concerned about getting our name, our brand up there, and getting that done. And then the other tenants can handle coming to y'all and getting permission, or going to Ernest or whoever, and getting permission to put their brand on there. But I'm most concerned about the restaurant right now.
Mr. Chairman, Rick, will that make it more difficult to do as a monument, as a multi-tenant sign, if there's no existing, it's just open air space for the future tenants?
Yes.
Okay.
You bring us hard.
Essentially, then you're still creating a freestanding sign, and our code states that the base has to be, hit the bottom of the sign face.
I think we're also missing address numbers and of course, the aforementioned base and landscaping.
Yeah, the address number would be, I guess what I'm saying
that
is, yeah,
required in
y'all
Hometown?
are, and I understand why the commission is asking staff these questions, but essentially, what we have here, we're trying to fit a round peg into a square, well, whatever the term is. Yeah. A square peg into a round hole.
Yeah.
So, I don't know the answers to all of y'all's questions, because we've never approved anything like this before for the Old Town District. And I believe that recently Dr. Keepers was denied the request for this type of sign when she proposed it along Bandera Road. So I don't have answers for you on all those things. All I can tell you is essentially if the commission wants to take action on this tonight and make a recommendation to the council, y'all should ensure that y'all's motion encapsulates everything that you want to see on the sign. So that essentially you're punting the ball to council, but giving them your recommendations on this sign. Because I just don't have the answers for everything on this type of sign. It doesn't fit within our code.
I understand and appreciate y'all taking the time, because I know that we're asking for a variance for a sign that would be permitted out here on this part of Bandera Road to be put in Old Town Helotes. And we need a sign, guys, and I don't know, we need to find a way to work around it to make it happen. And whatever y'all recommend and can get passed and that council will pass, then, we'll find a way to make it happen on our end. But we've got to let people know we're there.
Yeah, it's not. Any other questions, concerns, discussion?
My question or concern is the overall size, the 8-foot width on two sides. What is the overall, I mean, that's basically 9 times 8, 72, 144 square feet.
Well, our sign will be 3 foot by 8 foot, 24 square feet on each side, which is the max that we're allowed by code is 24 square feet per side.
For a single tenant, but for a multi-tenant, if this is what we're going after and trying to pass it as a multi-tenant sign, then we have to look at the overall sign.
Okay.
Size. And if you're leaving 4 spaces at the bottom for 4 tenants at 1.5 feet each high, that creates the whole height at 9 foot by 8.
I have a question, another question, sir. Is there a reason why we want to do a multi-tenant? And would it be best served if you just did a sign just for your business?
Well, there is the option that I think is in those renditions. To be honest with you, it's been a while since I submitted them. And they were hastily done because I found out the deadline was the very next day, and I was like, ah! So we threw it together quickly. You know, I'm fine with if only we get a sign and not the other tenants. And my understanding is that by code, then we have to come down to 12 feet? Is that correct? From 15?
Okay. It was my understanding that when this was presented to the commission, this was also presented to the city council the following Thursday, that the commission and council seemed to suggest, and of course we have the council liaison here, that what they wished to see was a 12 to 15 foot tall sign with a monument base that operated as a multi-tenant monument sign, but I don't think there was much discussion about whether it would actually be a multi-tenant monument sign, or it would be a single business. I think they were trying to, I think the commission and council was suggesting or stating they want a sign that's very similar to other signs you see on Bandera Road, regardless of if it's for one tenant or for multiple tenants, as long as it has that general aesthetic, if you would. So, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Sorry to interrupt you. But speaking for myself, I kind of get that point, but I think for me, I like the idea of it corresponding with the other monument signs, even multi-tenant, because this is a multi-tenant building. And, you know, I'd rather have him do a sign that can accommodate another tenant than have another tenant come back and say, well, I want one of those too. You know, and
that makes
you know, I would support this in multi-tenant format, you know, with the stipulation that, you know, if somebody on the other end of his building moves in and wants a sign, that they have to go here. We're not gonna give them, you know, another 24 square foot on that frontage. And I think that works to everybody's benefit. You know, even, I mean, presumably you're gonna get something for it as well.
I'm
so,
willing
I
to
mean,
do
good for-
whatever
yeah.
we need to do.
Yeah, I think the concern a little bit is that, you know, we're talking about a lot of alterations to the design. You know, we have a different graphic here. You talk about, you know, adding a base, landscaping, the address numbers, and it's kind of hard to wrap our mind around what, you know, I think conceptually we're okay with something multi-tenant, something about this big, but we're just having trouble wrapping our mind around what
Well, and
these
if I
things
need to
wanna
come
look
back
like.
next month with better drawings and so forth, then we do it again.
Yeah.
You know,
I would recommend doing that because I foresee the same level of concern or frustration on council side as well with the actual submittal here as it stands today. So I would recommend, if you're amenable to it too, and the commission's amenable to it too, postponing until May, the first meeting in May.
I want to make sure that I'm crystal clear on what y'all want and what will pass, so that when I come back, it's boom, cut and dry, checked off. And you mentioned that somebody else had requested an A-frame style sign recently and it was denied.
Yes.
So A-frame style signs are not going to work.
Well, the applicant, if I recall, also didn't want to do a rock base on that sign, or didn't even entertain the idea of doing a rock base. So I think the key here, and again, I'm gonna defer to the councilman on this from council, but I think the key here is that it looks as close to a monument sign as we can possibly get it,
Okay.
from my perspective, but.
Yeah, I think there were, just from the discussion we had about these on this board, that there were some concerns, that these kind of looked a little bit like you're selling the property as opposed to like something
Oh, no.
permanent, you know?
Okay.
And B, that the monument, the problem with the wedge sign is that in actuality, depending on from the direction you're viewing it, it actually becomes much bigger, you know, because from certain angles, you can see it from two sides. And so instead of being like 24 square feet, it now is like 30. And we got the sense that some people are trying to make a little bit of an end run around the size and creating more of a visual clutter that we'd like to see.
See, I'm not
Yeah.
trying to do that. I'm facing a unique set of challenges with the trees overhanging the highway, the road curving, the people going 60 miles an hour, the huge grove of oak trees on the other side blocking signage from people traveling northbound. I mean, I've got a very small window
Yep.
where I can put a sign where it would be visible. And, you know, if we put it just facing straight out, that's not gonna work. And if we put it sideways, you know, I've got the same problem that we have right now. It's boom,
Yeah.
gone.
And just as a personal side, I'm glad you showed me this, because I was gonna give you a hard time, because the sketch you showed me is like, you know, barbecue is your key word, and it looks to me about 2 inches tall, and you're never gonna see that on the one that you submitted to us here.
What did they say?
I mean, that's what we got, and I actually had,
Oh, yeah, no.
I had our guy, I scaled this up in my office, and I'm like, there's no way you're gonna see that at 40 miles an hour. I
No,
mean, you gotta,
again, literally,
Yeah.
and I didn't realize the deadline for submittal was 3 weeks, I think, 3 weeks before the meeting,
14 days.
14 days before the meeting. And right after the last meeting, then, you know, boom, boom, and it snuck up on me, and it was like Ernest was kind enough to shoot me an email that says, hey, this is due tomorrow. And I'm like, oh, no. So we kind of scrambled, and, yeah.
But just, if you could give us, you know, your logo.
Yeah.
Put a couple different colors with some names.
Okay. And I'll get with the other tenants as well and see exactly what they want to put on there. Okay, so A-frame, yes, no.
I think no on the A-frame.
I think an A-frame is on the table if it meets all the other requirements we're detailing, you know? Everything else that checklist we just provided. I mean, then it's,
Schematics are relatively easy for these sign companies to produce.
Well, you would think so.
I mean, if an A-frame is really what you want, I would suggest bringing forth both the A-frame schematic and also just the single with the double-sided face on it.
Okay. And even though it's behind the fence and the dumpsters, y'all would like to see it rocked?
Right, because
Okay,
fences go away.
okay. All right.
And I think, as you look at it in advertisement-wise, without the fence, the rock may catch more eye to the
Okay.
sign.
Well,
Just my
and
thought.
it'll add more
The only
credibility.
problem is if I take the fence down, then my dumpsters are there. And so we're not gonna, yeah.
But we talked about possibly moving your fence in a little bit for that dumpster thing, even though.
I'll talk to the landlord, get with him, get with a new sign guy, because I don't know, I still haven't gotten a price from him.
I can give you some names, although it's tough. I'm an architect, and I have trouble with this too. I mean, everybody is slammed.
Well, I'm trying to use, I'm real big on, I live in Bandera, so I try to shop in Bandera, but when I'm doing stuff for the restaurant, I try to use local guys. And sign guy I used in the past, great guy, nice guy, but very expensive. And so I was referred to this guy, and it not been too good. So we'll go outside of Helotes and get some prices and so forth, and
Because you really need to get that sign up. That's your number one priority. Because a restaurant without a sign is,
well, we have a sign, and thank goodness for social media, because quite honestly, our social media, our Yelp, it'd be kind of interesting to share with y'all sometime and to share with the city council as to how many out-of-town visitors we have brought to Old Town Helotes, just through Yelp and getting recognized by Texas Monthly and so forth, that people, barbecue enthusiasts, they're almost like a cult, and they seek us out. I mean, I don't know if y'all realize this or not, but we're in the top 100 rated barbecue restaurants in the entire state of Texas. And, you know, there's over, I forget what the number was, something ridiculous, over 2,500 barbecue restaurants that they've been reviewed, and we're in the top 100. And so we have people that literally come from out of town, and the other shop owners tell us constantly that since we've moved there, their business is up. And, you know, I'd love to see more retail business in Old Town instead of insurance offices and stuff, but anyway, I'll do whatever we need to do. So we'll concrete it, do the rock, submit 2 different styles, get the artwork from all the other tenants, and I'll see y'all next month. Eventually, we'll get a sign.
So you'd like to pull this from the agenda?
Pull it back and we'll resubmit, yeah. Now, I do have a question. As I get schematics and stuff, Rick, if I submit them to Ernest or to you, or is there any way to disseminate that information and get some feedback? I mean, is it legal, is it ethical to get feedback before we come back so that, you know,
I can distribute it to them, but you need to send that to me.
okay,
And I can get some feedback from them. There are some obligations on their part. Here's Mike.
yeah, I've got
There's some obligations on their part for what to do and what not to do in those situations,
Yeah.
but we can do that.
Okay.
Or I can facilitate that.
Okay. I just, because I don't want to be looking at, now we're coming back in June. And then coming back in July.
You know, we don't want to be, you know, sign Nazis, but on the other hand, you know, we're trying to develop a brand for this part of town especially, and, you know, we just want to make sure that, you know, what we're doing is adding to that value, and that, you know, that benefits us, but it benefits you too,
Yeah.
because you're becoming an anchor to this, and
Well,
we want to make sure that you
We
know,
wanna
get
stay,
the
and we
most
wanna
out of
make
it,
it work.
so.
So,
If you do it right, sir, when you come out of your, as I mentioned before, when you come out of your business, that's like an enclosed parking lot area, and if you have it the way we're talking about it, it becomes a landscape of prominence, because people will see your signage and the way it's positioned and propped, and it just, you know, it'll look nice, and it could become even a picture taken, hey, I was here.
Yeah.
You know, so, I mean, it's inside the property, but it's also, it's adding more credibility to your restaurant.
Okay.
If you think of it that way
But
as
just to
well.
be
So
clear then,
you're
y'all are-
enhancing your business, it's an
be
investment.
clear, y'all would really like to see that fence moved back and the sign in front of the fence as well.
Well, that would be
I think
ideal.
It would just
but-
be a better eye candy.
Okay. The sign's getting very expensive.
Well, and the fence, you have to decide if you put a fence behind it or if you don't.
Yeah.
That's up to you.
Well,
Instead of putting a corner fence just to hide the dumpster.
And I think by code, we have to have a fence around our dumpsters anyway, or they have to be
Some
not
businesses just
visible.
have a wrap
Yeah.
around, just around the dumpster itself.
Yeah, and that may be what we have to build. If I can get the-
That's
yeah.
back in your court, see what you
Yeah.
can come up with.
Yeah, and that quite honestly goes into the landlord's hands, because we're not the only dumpster. It's multi-tenant building, there's multiple dumpsters, so, yeah. And he doesn't want to pay for anything. All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Next month.
Commissioner Haza, would you like to make a motion?
Are we not doing item
Oh,
number
I'm
7?
sorry, we do have, my apologies, we have another item, one more item. Getting ahead of myself.
Oh, man, we almost got away with that one.
You were just trying for extra points for being your first night out, weren't you?
Okay, item number 7, discussion and action on an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Helotes, Texas, amending municipal code of ordinances, chapter 98 zoning by adding section 98-11 ornamental towers and similar structural elements in order to prescribe maximum heights for said structures, and amending section 98-69 overlay district B3-03 permitted and non-permitted uses, declaring a public use, authorizing the city administrator to take all necessary steps to implement the provisions of this ordinance. Mr. Schroeder, you have anything to lead us off with on this one?
Yes, sir. Included within your packet, I did want to call attention to some things. Chairman Michelle, knowing that he was not going to be here, did provide his comments to the commission and to Commissioner Whiteman. The second page in your packet are the results from the schedule of uses exercise that we did with the different colored dots during the last meeting. And then we get to the ordinance itself. The ordinance is actually relatively simple, and you may or may not agree with certain sections. But if you first go into section 1, the addition, what we're trying to do there is add a section 98-11, which would be entitled Ornamental Towers and Similar Structural Elements to the Code of Ordinances. And it defines, let me just read it, it's easy. It says, this section sets height limitations for ornamental towers, spires, and similar structural elements that are not designed for occupancy. We do define what a tower and a spire are. And C is the critical aspect. It says that in all zoning districts, the maximum height of ornamental towers, spires, and similar structural elements shall not exceed 50% of the allowable height regulations prescribed within each district. When I spoke to you at the last commission meeting, there were a variety of different thoughts on what the heights of these types of things should be. So we chose a conservative estimate at this point. And so essentially, if the height in an R1 zoning district is 35 feet, or I think it's 34, it's 17 and a half, so what is that, 34? So it's 35 feet. The maximum height of these types of elements could be 17 and a half feet. That's what it would be in R1 and R2 zoning districts. In B1, B2, B3, B4, and Industrial 1, you would be looking at a maximum height of 20 feet. And then in Old Town Helotes, you would be looking at a maximum height of 21 feet. If you kept the 50% limitation. Are there any questions on that?
That's the maximum height of the monument or spire? Not
Of the tower or the spire, yes, sir.
tower spire, okay.
Not signs or anything else, just
Right, right.
those other elements. Going to section 2, we have the amendment of the actual B3 schedule of uses. No changes were to the beginning part of the ordinance, but based upon the comments that we received at last meeting, I'm going to go through C1 and C2. C1 states the uses that are not permitted in the B3 overlay district. Alcoholic beverage sales would be moved to an allowable use through city council approval. Automobile, including motorcycle sales and service, new and used, when used incidental to new sales, service completely enclosed in B3 district, that would move from a permitted use through CC approval to a non-permitted use in the overlay district. Automobile filling station and or service and automobile paint and body would move from a non-permitted use to a permitted use through CC approval. Automobile parking lots or the garages stayed the same, so was and still is a non-permitted use. Automobile car wash self-service moved from a non-permitted use to a permitted through city council approval use in B3 overlay. Bus passenger station and the second one, funeral homes, those remain the same as non-permitted. Hotel, other than motel or motor inn, where patrons access rooms via parking area. That moved from a permitted use through CC approval to an outright non-permitted use. And manufacturing light moved from a non-permitted use to a permitted through CC approval use. Newspaper printer did the same thing, moved from non-permitted to permitted through CC approval. Pawn shop and RV park stayed the same as a non-permitted use. Stone cutting and monument sales, storage building, which is below that, and tavern with outdoor area and tavern completely enclosed would move from a non-permitted use to a permitted use through city council approval. Theater outdoor, both of those would stay as is, as an unpermitted use, and veterinarian office and hospital with outside boarding moved from a non-permitted use to a permitted use through CC approval. There were several things and again, when you're putting dots up on a thing, it's kind of hard to see how it all sort of plays together, right? And so there are a few comments that I have on these changes in C1 and C2. The first one has to do with hotel. It seems odd to me that a hotel would move from a permitted use through city council approval to a non-permitted use when we're moving manufacturing light from a non-permitted use to a permitted use with city council approval. So that immediately struck me as kind of odd. The same with newspaper printer, moving that from a non-permitted use to a permitted use through CC approval. That seems strange to me, and I think originally it was placed in there because if I recall, newspaper printers used to be a very loud, I believe somewhat smelly operation, given ink and paper and all that sort of stuff. So I think that's why it was originally a non-permitted use. And lastly, moving storage building from a non-permitted use to a permitted through city council approved use process. That seemed out of character with what we have said that we wanted to do in the past, or that we were looking at. So generally speaking, everything from my perspective tended to make sense. There were some things with automobile paint and auto body shop, but then again, we're talking about one that's completely enclosed in a B3 district, so they can look nice on the outside. It's just the use is a little different from what is typically seen in B3 overlay, although we have a lot of automobile mechanics in that area. So hotel, manufacturing light, newspaper printer, and storage building, those were the four that immediately stood out to me that y'all may want to discuss a little bit more before sending this to city council. But that's just my opinion. That's all I have.
I had a couple of, well, one I noticed in here that I was kind of questioning was funeral home. And, I mean, it seems to me that's fairly low intensity as opposed to some of the other things that are being presented, and just kind of throwing out there that potentially could be appropriate to my mind in the B3. And it's not really, I mean, usually they were very nice looking buildings. I mean, it's not the nicest thing to think about, but it's not a completely inappropriate use. I mean, even if it were just with city council approval, it's something to consider. And then a couple other uses I thought of that maybe were not part of the exercise, in addition to what Commissioner Michelle had noted, was anything along the way of assisted living, was that allowed or in any way permitted in these either?
Assisted
outright-
living is typically going to be a multifamily complex.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
those are an outright non-permitted use in any zoning district. Unless now we have a new thing, the PUD that was extended citywide.
Okay.
And so people theoretically could go through that process if there was something like an assisted living or multifamily, if they really thought that it would be appropriate in Helotes.
Okay. Outdoor retail was another one that occurred to me that, that you do see some of those stores where it's jungle gyms or outdoor furniture where there's a large outdoor retail presence. It's not really an item in our code, but it occurred to me that it might be something that could come up. It's a little bit outside of what we.
We actually, it is addressed in the other portion of the schedule of uses where we talk about retail sales, no outside storage, or department store, no outside storage, that kind of thing. So we do address that in the other schedule of uses that's citywide.
Okay.
It's not always a perfect scenario because sometimes the business will say, but we're not a department store, we're a retailer, and there are different requirements. So we always have to work through that, but.
Okay. And then it did occur to me also that we do have some, I think there is at least one existing storage facility in the B3, is that?
I think it is in B3 overlay, if I had the map in front of me, but that was before the B3 overlay was
Right,
brought
so-
into creation, I believe.
Next to the vet.
I'd have to go back and look,
I
but
think
yes, right in front of Cedar Springs, actually, to the back of his house is a storage facility.
Yeah. So that we would just, I mean, again, it's grandfathered now, I guess it would remain grandfathered.
Yes, sir.
And do we, in our code, do we have anything, and I ran into this in my professional life where, say an act of God comes along, it burns down, and, you know, there's an insurance claim to rebuild. Is there anything in zoning that addresses a non-conforming use where there's, you know, destruction, repair, or rebuilding of,
Yeah, it has to be over 60% damage.
okay,
And if it's over 60% damage, then they lose non-conforming rights at that point.
okay.
And so the use and all of that would no longer be grandfathered.
Okay. And the ones that you had again were light manufacturing, newspaper printer, what were the other two? I'm sorry, what were the other two?
Hotel,
Hotel.
manufacturing light, newspaper printer, and storage building. Hotel, again, would be making it an outright non-permitted use. Manufacturing light would be moving it down to a permitted through CC. Newspaper printer would be doing the same thing. And storage building would be moving it to a permitted with CC approval as well. I'm just thinking from my perspective, if I lived in a neighborhood abutting a B3 overlay, that there are certainly manufacturing light would bother me. And so I actually believe that should be a not permitted use. Newspaper printer and storage building probably would bother me as well. And so I'm just thinking about it from my experience with,
Yeah.
or from my perspective, albeit I don't live in Helotes. The hotel thing, though, I think is interesting. The city staff and the EDC have been working on trying to find hotels of higher caliber that would come into the city. And it just so happens that B3 overlay is the area where, if we're going to be able to put a hotel in the city, it would be in that area or very close to it. I think hotels, from my perspective, they look a lot different than they used to. They're much nicer aesthetically from the outside. We do have the ability to limit height of hotels, whether it's 2 stories. I can tell you that a hotel in Helotes would likely need to be 3 stories to make it profitable. And so I do see that there's probably some of those concerns with putting that in a B3 overlay. But there's a lot of, from my perspective, there's a lot of room from Bandera Road to the backs of people's homes. I mean, there are significant distances in some places. So I'm really lobbying for something that I've been passionate about for a long time. I think that we should at least have it open to the possibility so that we can review it and see what it looks like before we just say, no, you can't do it. That's where I'm coming from on that.
Well, I think we're talking about, though, permitting hotels that are not a walk to your car straight to the door.
Yeah,
We're talking about a hotel with a lobby. Where it's
we're not
from
talking
inside.
about a
Yeah.
motel.
But then again, it doesn't really have the look that we're trying to maintain.
I think it
Good.
could. I think it just depends on what type of hotel. I mean, if you're talking about like a Hilton or something along those lines, the aesthetic of those buildings is far superior to that of Motel 6, even though, and actually Motel 6, you actually still go through a lobby today. You don't go to it from the outside. So I think it just depends. And that's the whole purpose of having the design review of the structure before you can get a building permit.
comments, questions?
I tend to agree with what Rick says there. The only thing I have a comment on is a newspaper printer. Nowadays, I doubt anybody would venture in that path.
Yeah.
I don't think you have any worry about
I mean,
anybody.
so, yeah, I mean, in my mind, I'll leave it in not permitted, because I don't, I can't see it ever. It's just not gonna happen, so you may as well leave it in not allowed or not permitted. Storage building, I mean, there are some that are much nicer, nowadays, but I guess the point is well taken that, a number of these do back up to residential areas, and, there's a concern that, that's an automatic ding on your property values to have, especially if it's not such a pretty one.
Yeah, I'm more concerned about the not pretty ones.
Yeah,
There's,
yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of the storage buildings that are now like on I-10 going
Yeah.
towards Bernie. They're very nice looking on the outside. They're completely enclosed. They're air conditioned.
But they also are 3-4 stories
Yeah.
tall, which is another issue.
Yeah. It's just my perspective that I just don't think they're appropriate for B3
Yeah.
overlay.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. So, I mean, do we want to kind of run through these? I mean, I guess let's start with the low-hanging fruit. Do we all feel like newspapers should be a no-go?
Yeah.
Sir?
Yeah, we can take a little votes.
Aye, and everyone?
Aye.
Aye. Light manufacturing, motion?
What, is there a definition for light manufacturing? I mean, I'm not really sure I understand the difference between light and medium.
Yes, the city has light and heavy. Heavy is very similar to what you think heavy should be. Light incorporates a lot of things, though, that I'm just thinking are going to be too intensive even for, just because they're light manufacturing. But it'll be easier if I just tell you the definition of light.
Sure.
Okay. If you go there, it says light manufacturing is defined as manufacturing, processing, service, storage, wholesale, and distribution operations, with most operations contained within an enclosed building with limited outside storage. It's typified by the fabrication of certain materials and products with limited production of noise, vibration, air pollution, fire hazards, or noxious emissions. It typically sells its goods to a wholesaler or directly to the end consumer. And then it gives a list of what light manufacturing would include: beverage manufacturer, apparel wholesaler, bakery wholesaler, confectionery manufacturer. So, I mean, I think what you're talking about is larger sort of industrial-looking buildings, even though the products that they're manufacturing are everyday items.
Gotcha.
I think for me, the issue is not so much what they're manufacturing, it's the infrastructure that comes along with it. You're talking about loading docks, shipping, forklifts coming in and out. I mean, I know I've done a few of these, and that's par for the course, so I would be, not so happy to see that here, but if anybody else has any thoughts. Is there a motion for this one?
I'd move to leave it and stay in the
Sorry, keep it,
restricted,
no, not permitted?
not permitted. Yeah.
Not permitted.
Permitted. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And storage building,
Let's see, it is not permitted?
Not permitted.
all in favor?
Aye.
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 hotel where patrons access rooms via parking area. Or, excuse me, hotel where
Other than.
patrons access rooms via lobby. Any discussion?
You know, they bring in quite a bit of money. I mean, and I know when I have guests coming, we've got to send them, you know, San Antonio, basically. Anyway, if it's a nice place, I wouldn't mind seeing one.
I'll move it back to city council permitted or
Yeah.
approval.
CC?
Yeah.
CC?
All in favor?
Aye.
And the last one that was brought up was the funeral home.
Oh, yeah.
People are dying to get in there. CC?
Let them deal with it.
All in favor?
CC.
Aye.
Aye.
For CC?
CC.
So I guess the next step is this goes before council and,
Yes, we would send this to council. We do actually need to have a formal motion, though, that would incorporate all of the things that were changed.
Okay.
Because this is a zoning matter, I do need a formal vote on the entire ordinance as presented.
okay,
Mr. Chair, before we do that, I just want to state my personal, on the tower and spire height. My personal view is section C. I would just like to have a maximum, say, 15 feet everywhere, rather than the 50% of allowed height within each district. I think once you're getting up into 20, 21, 22 feet, getting a little big.
yeah.
That's just in my,
I think for me, it really the Old Town district, I think more than any of them, I think that 21 is a little bit, that's kind of pushing it for what we have going on there in my mind for, you know, we're trying to do small,
Yeah.
local scale.
And it would simplify it.
Yeah.
I mean, and like we said, if we cap it at 15 feet, we could always give it a 20%. Can't we give it a 20, 25%?
Not for,
yeah,
this
it's
is a zoning code issue, so no, it would be, that would be the limit. The only one at that point would be Board of Adjustment who could grant a variance.
Yeah, they're all gonna want it.
Yeah. That would be my personal opinion.
Throw it out there.
I probably would not approve
Here,
this
make a
whole
motion.
motion if that were at
Here,
50%.
throw it out there.
Throw it out
All in
there?
favor?
Change it to 15
Well,
feet?
do we want to try to split this into two motions? Do we want to do the, can we,
But
can
we're
we do
just
the permitted
modifying
use?
the, oh, okay,
Want me
yeah.
to say, can we do one for the permitted use and then a second one for the spire?
Yep.
Does that make sense?
I think we
That's good, I just need,
Yeah. Somebody want to make a motion for the uses?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chair, to recommend approval of the changes to Chapter 98 zoning, Article 3, District Regulations, Section 9869 overlay district, B3 overlay. With the existing changes that we just made? I mean, I have to state every single one of them.
That's perfect.
which, just for clarification, is moving the funeral home to a CC, moving hotel to a CC, making manufacturing light not permitted, newspaper printer not permitted, and storage building not permitted.
Correct.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is there a motion on the second item, towers and spires?
move to 7A.
I mean, is that, are y'all okay with,
We'll find out.
Throw it out there. We can take a consensus.
all right. Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the addition of Chapter 98 zoning, Article 1 in general, Section 9811 ornamental tower and similar structural elements, with the change in Section C being that the maximum height of all structural elements shall not exceed 15 feet in all districts.
Is there a second?
Second.
Pretty, all right, it's pretty tall.
Any further comment, discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All in?
Good.
Motion passes.
There goes my tower.
Now,
Okay.
you can ask me.
Mr. Haza, would you like to make a motion?
Chairman, I would move that we adjourn.
All in favor?
I'll second.
We're in favor. Yeah, skip that.
All right?
Aye.
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 Time is
8:14.